Hey, welcome back to the Ready State. One of the things that we're trying to move towards is being able to spot the root shapes in movements. So appreciating that, hey, most movements that we engage in have a start position and finish position, or we may be in some kind of circular repetitive pattern that at least moves through some kind of bookend or key movement shape. So that helps us to appreciate that I don't need to mobilize every single micro ray and vector. What I need to make sure is that I have control of the bookends and that my training will take care of that. So to that end, we want to help you to be able to identify some of our key movement languages in movements you may be able to see. And so as you're untangling movement problems, remember that we're a big fan of trying to say, hey, my shoulder hurts when I do X, because that X tells me about where the shoulder is experiencing or sending messages to the brain about something going on, or maybe just have a tissue restriction or some compensation. So for example, we said this before, that if you say, hey, my shoulder hurts, and I'm like, when you do what? And you say press, or going overhead, better example, then I can say, well, I know what overhead looks like, right? Do I have this rotational component? And then am I seeing you just exposing yourself to the raw range of motion without the rotation or not? Because if you have access to some of these mid-range positions but you don't have rotation, you don't have full access to your position. So we're trying to put movement rotation capacity back into the language of diagnostics. And I want you to be able to see, sort of get to the bottom of understanding what common movements are and like, oh, I understand what shape's being represented. So here's an example. If we did the Turkish Get Up, one of the reasons the Turkish Get Up is an amazing movement and could be slow or restorative, I don't even have to use this as a heavy, freakishly loaded position. The example of like Dan John doesn't just need to be loading this thing heavily, but it tells me a lot about what's going on in the body. So we'll start from this position. So if I grab this barbell, right, I can do the classic piece, fulcrum up. This shape is starting to approximate this press shape. So the one shape that isn't used here is when the arm is coming to extension like a bottom position of a push-up. But I start here and I end up here. So what's nice about the Turkish Get Up now is we get to work on what we call these long lever shapes. I can really see what's happening with the arm locked out straight, which means I can really understand what's happening with the shoulder and the rotation of the shoulder, because the demand of stabilization proximally or up at the high shoulder means that I have to create all of this not with a bent arm where I can create more rotation, but I have to do it more through this long lever. This is why we like to assess people for rotation and release stability or range of motion in these long lever positions. But in this shape, this is also what we call the long lever front rack shape. So, short lever front rack is here, long lever is here, but notice that the position remains constant at the shoulder. So I'm very mid-range. And what's nice now is that I begin to have a language of movement here where you can see, hey, is someone able to create stability here? Are they managing this? Can we teach them to move towards end range rotation? It don't have to be, especially if the load isn't very heavy, if I'm not very dynamic, this doesn't take very much rotation. But when it starts to go, what I'm interested in is, hey, do I have access to this rotation? And if I really am active here, doing that push-up plus movement where the shoulder protracts, I definitely want to make sure that my athlete is able to create rotation. And you can quickly see that by making sure that the barbell is going back or the thumb's pointing back and that the armpit is screwing into that position. I should see someone moving actively towards this rotational capacity. Now, this position, right, as I initiate, I press up, and as I translate into an arm shape here, I'm able to get this long lever shape with some easy open chain approximation, which means I'm loading the joint surfaces in an open chain environment, right? The hand isn't fixed on the ground, but suddenly look at this hand. It is fixed on the ground. And so what I'm starting to move towards is I go from a front rack shape to what we call this hang shape. So if I was sitting up, this hang shape would look like this. And if I had the arm out into this position, you can suddenly see it's just long lever hang. Now, we assess the hang shape with this internal rotated position because this is where you're getting crushed as an athlete, right? Shoulder transits forward. But we want to make sure that our athletes have a rotation window, at least 90 degrees here, and moving towards 70 degrees here. So the rotation window, 150, 160 degrees, no problem. So when I'm in this position then, suddenly you can see I've just weight bearing, and that's why yoga puts this triangle pose into their mix, because now I've got weight bearing in this hang shape, right? I'm not just always working, trying to pull something up off the ground in this position, but I'm able to work on this long lever position in this hang shape. And suddenly I'm in short lever hang shape on this arm, right? I can be here, but I'm moving towards external rotation, trying to teach myself to be more active and stable. Then I get to push through both shoulders in this position, and suddenly I've got this great loading through this shoulder and this shoulder. So it's a sneaky way to get that approximation through both shoulders. As I translate up, suddenly I'm in this long lever overhead shape. Again, what am I looking for? That I can handle moving that arm into external rotation, thumb is back, and I have this opportunity to express this rotation with the elbow straight and shoulder being active. And of course, if you want to drop the shoulder because that feels better to you, knock yourself out, but you'll see that as soon as the loads become significant, this becomes academic. You will meet somewhere in the middle, being able to adjust for position and stabilization. So suddenly you can understand why we love these overhead positions and overhead shapes with the Turkish Get Up, and we use it to challenge the hang shape, and we use it to challenge, right, front rack. And being able to move fluently between those key positions is a reason that we have so much success working with our young people on the ground, doing crawling, to side plank, to pushing to downward dog, to loping, to pushing backwards, the way the gymnasts warm up. And what you should begin to see is, it doesn't matter what style of warm up or skill or stabilization drills we're using, the root shapes are there. So start seeing your archetypes. Start to appreciate, again, that it's not just about can you make the body pass through these shapes, but you've got to be able to have the rotation and understand what you're seeing too. See you next time.